I shall ask Director Sliwa to proceed with the roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, trustees. This is our roll call for our meeting of 27 February 2019. Trustee Barry.
Present.
Trustee Cram.
Present.
Trustee Danaher.
Present.
Trustee Jacobs.
Present.
Vice Chair, Chair McPherson.
Present.
Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Trustee McRae.
Present.
Trustee McDonald.
Present.
Trustee Parisian sends her regrets this evening. Trustee Schooler.
Present.
Trustee Swan. Student Trustee Bushra-Kadra.
Present.
Thank you,
Present,
Mr. Chair.
sorry.
You have quorum.
Okay, next item on the list is item 5.01. We need the approval of the consent agenda. Items 5.01 to 5.04. Moved by. I need a mover and a seconder to the motion. Trustee Danaher, seconded by Trustee McRae. That the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda items 5.02 to 5.04. Please cast your votes online.
I'm in favor, Chair. I'm coming in.
Still waiting for a few.
May I vote by show of hands as I'm having trouble with the
Okay,
computer?
if you're having technical trouble, show of hands then. And motion carried. We're not showing any unfinished business. Next item on the agenda is item 8.0, Director of Education comments, February 27th, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'd like to update the board that we had a very successful staff meeting last week. We call it an LLMA meeting, or Leadership and Learning Modules for Administrators. And what happens at those meetings is that on alternating months, all the principals and some of our vice principals join us at a central location, and we go through a very detailed agenda of learning that helps to speak to some of the priorities that we have in our school district. On the alternating months, you might think, well, what are our leaders doing then? And we do focus on fundamental math and fundamental math learning with school teams. Last week's agenda was really speaks to a lot of things that we are trying to get more close to as learning and in terms of program delivery in our schools. We looked at classroom management and classroom management models, knowing that often the environments that we create for students is a very strong influence in their comfort and their success in learning. We did look at setting wellness goals. Wellness is a very high priority for our school board, from, as you know, from our board strategic plan and the director's work plan. And we're in our starting our second full year with those wellness goals, and we want to get closer to what does it mean to actually do them in ways that are generating data about our success and how we're actually influencing and improving on the wellness of students while at school. We also were looking at experiential learning, which is a very important focus in our school settings, because we realize that becoming acclimatized for different ways of working is another way that we get students prepared for a successful life in our school district. We certainly appreciated the debrief that Superintendent Rudders did about Safe Schools episode in one of our communities, and what did we take away as key learnings from the MIN team that were key and vital to that discussion. And lastly, we did talk about specialist high skills majors. This is a very important focus that we have in our school district, Mr. Chair. All across Ontario, school boards offer specialist high skills majors. I'm very proud about what we're doing through Superintendent Coombs and Principal Trassick and their efforts to ensure that students are focusing on industry-specific learning that comes with a credential at the end of their graduation when they finish that specialist high skills major. And because of that, it also enhances their employability for the future. So many important things that's happening. We wanted to make sure that you know that staff are investing on how to focus on learning, lead the learning, and to monitor its impact with our students. Pleased to see that was all taking shape, and I do want to actually make sure that I also credit Superintendent Loshaw for his team that spends a great deal of time trying to coordinate that. It's almost like a large social function for 132 of your best friends, and then that they pass judgment on whether or not it was useful or valuable for them, unlike some dinner parties that you would go to. So I'm pleased to say that they do come back on those alternating months, and it's because of the good efforts that people around this table invest in that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Chair of the Board comments. I assume this is my turn? Okay, I'm not used to...
You can, Bill, but I have also a few things to say.
I really didn't know what to say when I seen this on the agenda, and I'm going to speak off the cuff. That sometimes gets me in trouble, but we're going to go with it. I walked into a school today for an entirely different function. It was part of the spec ed review, and it wasn't even one of my schools. It was Chimo, Trustee Schooler's school. And the first thing I seen was the vice principal practically down their knees talking to a smiling child. And the conversation was short. I'll see you in September. It was a kindergarten registration. And I stepped into the office to sign the log sheet to say when I was in and when I was out. And the next person I seen was a teacher that had taught my son. And I realized right then and there that she was probably key at that time in his educational journey to him becoming a success. And then I reflect for a moment on the way down here of the successes I've enjoyed as a trustee. And I think we have to acknowledge our staff, be it teachers, be it EAs, be it superintendents, because an awful lot of the success that we enjoy as a board, and I'm not going to pretend we're perfect, starts with a scene of that vice principal talking to a kindergarten registration and that smiling child. So I want to simply, as chair tonight, acknowledge all of our staff, and that's key to what makes this board work the way it does. And that's my comment for tonight. And Mr. McAllister, care to comment?
Thank you, Chair McPherson. Thank you for your comment. It's very interesting to get personal insight like that into what's happening in our schools. I have very little to add other than what has been addressed in my various newsletters. But I have been very focused on the community and media outreach, particularly in these days in the areas like Glengarry and South Dundas. I have had a meeting with MPP Jim McDonnell and Minister Stephen Clark on the transportation file, which has been occupying a great deal of my time. And we have been maintaining a very deep and sincere line of communication with the Minister's Chief of Staff, and the Policy Advisor, STAO, etc. So I feel we're making some progress there. I understand, too, that the weather has made it difficult to give traction and momentum to our business, but I'm looking forward to the Audit Committee and the Accountability Framework Committee next week and the week after. I also want staff to know, or the trustees to know, that the director and I have been meeting very regularly, oftentimes daily, more than once daily, on various issues, and in particular coming up is the Leadership Performance Review, which I want everyone to know that is on track. So that is about all I have to add.
Okay. Now, moving on. Item number 10, delegations and presentations. And I will ask Superintendent Loshaw to make the introduction.
Okay. Good evening, and through you, Chair. It's my pleasure to introduce and welcome Nancy Keach. Nancy is the principal of Maple Grove Public School, and I think it's important to note that Nancy has a secondary background, but is now very much enjoying her role in an elementary school at Maple Grove. Nancy prides herself on the way in which the school uses data to get to know their students and to track their progress. She's very enthusiastic in the way in which she talks about their experiential learning and outdoor education, and tonight she's going to share the school's journey with regard to their school improvement plan for student achievement and well-being. Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks very much. Through the chair, very happy to be here. I've got a lot to share about Maple Grove. It's a terrific little school. If you haven't made it out to Lanark, which is past Balderson, we're still dealing with the geography for some of our new trustees. So I've only been there about 12 months, and it was such a delight to come into a school that is so grounded in the community that it lives in. So we have some really fantastic partnerships. The Early Years Center is there 2 days a week, and they do lots of things with us. We also have Big Brothers Big Sisters in there. The Lanark Youth Center is there 4 days a week. They make use of our facilities. We do lots of sharing of equipment and ideas and projects. And we had this amazing partnership with the Lanark County Community Justice, who have been doing sharing circles and restorative justice practices with us for about 4 years. And so this year they really helped us, or last year when I came, they really helped us with a project that I'll show you at the end of the presentation. So that's been one of the really gifts, is all of the partnerships in the community. A lot of the people who live in Lanark went to Maple Grove and have lots of stories about what it was like to be at Maple Grove or in early years. And so it's been really fantastic to learn that about the school. So this year, we topped 100 students. We all gave a big cheer when we made it over the 100 line, because that's a big thing for a small school. We are a K-6 school with a core French program, and we have about 10% of our population is Métis or First Nations, which is a little bit higher than in other areas of the board. So we have a great positive crew of volunteers who come into the school too. So we have a breakfast program, a snack program, a hot lunch program, all provided for the kids. We have a community closet where we have clothes and games and books available for the kids to take home. And we have an amazing school council who tonight is busy at Lanark Landing Restaurant, for those of you who know the area, trying to find ways to fund some playground renovations for us for next year. So it's a really good group. So the next slide's kind of interesting. If you took a look at it, this is our EQAO data year by year. Now, when you look at percentage data like this for a school like Maple Grove, you have to keep in mind that every cohort there has 8 or 9 students. So you'll see jumps of 10% or 20% from year to year based on one student being different, one student passing or not passing. And in the 2016-17 year there, where it says NR, that's our grade 5 class, which currently has 3 students in it. So that would have been an interesting statistical line if it had been reported on. So there's some things that we can celebrate. Our focus, as I say, I've only been there 12 months, but our focus over the last 3 years in the literacy SIPs that I've looked through has been on reading, and we are seeing some gains in reading, particularly in the junior year, but in both years we're seeing some movement in our reading, and that matches our data wall as well, where we see our primary students tend to be behind in our reading level, but by grade 5 or 6 they're catching up, and that is true in our EQAO results, and it's true in our school right now. The things that we're not seeing so much are increases in writing. So that's where we've shifted our focus this year to look at primary reading and junior writing. And then in our math results, unfortunately, we're still struggling with our math. We are finding that our attitudinal data is really improving, so our kids are feeling better about math, feeling more confident about math, but we are still struggling with the results. The gift of having such a small school, though, is at our first PD day, we were actually able to take every student's EQAO test, question by question, with all of the released questions, and look at each single question to say, what are we doing differently from the rest of the board in the province? And we found two areas in particular in numeracy that our results seemed quite different. All of our kids struggled with these particular kinds of questions. And that sort of narrow focus is really nice in trying to set up your SIPSA. You really have a sense of, okay, this is the spot that we missed out for this year, so let's make sure that our programming doesn't do that again. So in terms of our literacy, well, that's very hard to see, isn't it? So I've got a triangle there just so to sort of demonstrate the three kinds of interventions we have. So the good for everyone, the good for most, and then a few targeted interventions for some students who are really struggling. But overall, basically what we're doing with literacy is we're really going back to text structures and the basics of a word even. So in our primary grades, we're doing a lot of phonemic testing. We're actually looking at how do you say sounds, how do you blend sounds, rather than working on sight words and working on reading levels and things like that, where we really weren't seeing much growth. And it was because our students really didn't have those pre-reading skills that they needed. So we've done instead a lot of testing and a lot of guided work around phonemic awareness. And we have seen really big gains in that since September. So 95% of our students have improved in their phonemic awareness by, I think for our level 3 and 4 students, we've gone from only 23% of our students between K and 2 being at level 3 and 4. Now we have 54, and our goal for June is 75 students to be at level 3 and 4 on their sound skills. So that's what we've been working on with our primary groups. And now this next task from February on, we're going to be adding our writing work for our juniors, because we've come up with a writing continuum that we like and some writing practices that are working. So we're hoping to see some improvement in those results. Our numeracy, it's very similar to the numeracy presentations you've probably seen from other schools, because we are very much wedded to the skills that we're learning in the fundamentals of math days, the fantastic skills being taught there, and our teachers are definitely fully on board with everything that they're learning. So when you walk into the math classroom at Maple Grove, you will see messy math bins on the table. You'll see some kids working on technology. You'll see some kids building. You'll see a guided group with the teacher. You'll see another group of kids playing a game, a targeted skill game. So everything is very much differentiated and focused on where our kids are with numeracy. So one of the things we noticed when we did this really close look at the EQAO is that the questions that the kids were struggling on particularly were to do with money and time. So our numeracy skills were about on par with other people on the other questions, but the ones where we were doing money and time, they were really, really not understanding those two concepts. So we put a lot of time and attention into money and time on a daily basis to see if we can improve that sort of base of knowledge for all of our students, our juniors and our primary students. And then I wanted to talk a little bit more about our wellness, because our wellness program is actually complicated and there's a lot of different parts to it. So one thing that I noticed when I came is that we had to do some work around student voice. We didn't have a leadership team in the school. We were doing lots of interesting project-based work in different grades, but we weren't seeing a lot of sort of inquiry in the whole school. Another thing, and it was the first thing that hit me when I came to Maple Grove, was how beautiful the space is. If you ever go out there, it's got an incredible yard behind with all of this forested area, just so much potential for learning there. So that was another big chunk that we really wanted to take on and look at. A third area was scheduling. We looked at the schedule. We saw some kids had a lot of different teachers, and that maybe our afternoons were a little bit harder for some of our kids. So we wanted to see how can we change our schedule to build in some of these things that will help support wellness. And then the last piece of our puzzle there is we've invested with Catherine Funston in the Positive Behavior Support Program that we have really got going now in February. So because I'm going to show you about our outdoor space in a minute, I'll just talk about a couple of those other things. So one thing in our scheduling is that we've set up a sort of a check-in circle in the morning. So when kids come in, all of the classes come in, they get a little snack from the breakfast bin, and then we go into a sharing circle using those skills that they've learned over the last few years. And they talk about where they are. They have a I am in a green today, I'm in an orange today, and this is why. I'm feeling kind of red, and this is why. So we do sort of a wellness check-in at the beginning of the day, and we just do a quick way to track that so we know where everyone is. And then at the end of the day, we also have a closing circle. So we've had our day of learning. Let's do some closing and talking about what we learned and also about how we're feeling heading home at the end of the day. Because we're going from that closing circle into recess, it really gives us some good information about who might need some extra support in that recess, who might want to do a different inside recess crew that day, who's feeling ready to go out. It's prevented a lot of problems in the yard. So just that simple sort of change to the schedule has been really helpful. And I've had just fantastic support from the staff. It's a really wonderful staff of teachers out there who've been there and are dedicated to those kids. And they're all on board with doing this. And so although it looks a little bit different in kindergarten and grade 6, everybody's doing it and they're all sharing in different ways. So that's been really positive. And then in February, after working through the process, we started our positive behavior intervention support program. And one of the neat things about that is when you start it, you ask for champions in the school who would like to champion this new project that we're going to work on. And what we found was that, what I found is when I sent that request out, everybody on staff, every single person, every EA and every teacher and the OA said, can I be a part of that champions team? So that was amazing. And what it meant is that we didn't really do it with a champions team. We had one quick meeting with the champions, and then after that, we've used our staff meetings and our PD days to do that. And so we worked through a whole matrix of what we think is really important in terms of how students need to understand what our expectations are. And we've come up with our Maple Grove Rocks program. So that's focused on respect and ownership and community and kindness and safety. So those are the sort of 5 pillars that we're working with. And one of the things about this program, I know you've had a presentation on it, but the thing that our staff has found really interesting is that we went through this process of thinking, what does respect look like in all of these areas? What does respect on the yard look like? What does it look like in the bathroom? What does it look like in the gym, in the classroom? How does that look different in all of those places? And then that's been taught in our sharing circles in the morning. We've actually done lessons around what does respect look like. So February was our respect month. We started there, and then we're moving on month by month to all of our other goals. It's been great for the staff to have the same language to talk about what's happened. So now when somebody comes in from the yard, I pull out my copy of our yard poster and I say, what went wrong here? Like if we look through this, where did it go wrong? Was this an issue of some kindness? Was this an issue about taking responsibility? Is this part of our community? And we can talk through it using that language, and the kids are really responding well to that, and that's only a month in. They're also very much loving the positive part of it, which is the stickers that we have. So here's a sticker, you're doing an amazing job. Here I brought it one for everybody in case you want your own sticker for filling a bucket. So the kids get their stickers, and we're tying it into our numeracy goals because the stickers are actually money. They put them on a sticker chart, and then they can come spend them on Fridays at our little store where we have a lot of donated treats and toys and books and things that they can trade them in for, and we talk about the advantages of saving versus spending on a candy bar or saving for the LOL doll that you really want. They've really been lovely about that, but for me that's the least important part of the program. The most important part has been the clarity around expectations and how well they've responded to that. So that's been really positive for us, I think, so far. I'm interested to see in June what our results look like in terms of the data. And then here's our kind of special project I wanted to share with you. So when I came in January to Maple Grove, I just looked in the yard and thought, wow, we've got to do something great with this space. And there is a play structure there, but it's the least interesting part of the yard, I think, because there's all these big rocks and there's this forest right there and there's all different kinds of trees and there's so much going on. And sort of a week after I arrived, I had a call from the Lanark County Community Justice people who had been coming in saying, this is who we are, this is what we've been doing. And I said, how wonderful, can we come together and talk about it? And then that same day, I got the email about the Community Experiential Grant, which is available. Let me get the right language here. Community Connected Experiential Learning Grant, which seemed perfect. So I applied for that with the idea of making a restorative spiral garden as part of our space. And then, so we did the application together with the, with the partners from the Community Justice, and it was approved. And then the terrific thing was going to the kids and saying, I had already said to the kids, I would like to build something outside, and they said, yeah, go for it, Mrs. Keach, it's a good idea. So then when I got approved, I said, okay, so we've got some money, what are we gonna do? And then it just turned into a completely a school project. And so the reason I chose to highlight this is I think this is one of the best sort of crew examples you can get, because collaboration. We collaborated with the Lanark County community, but also within the whole school. So from kindergarten to grade 6, we did sharing circles about what is a space going to look like. We want an outdoor space, so what do you want to see in it? And they wanted to see a pool and a glass-roofed terrarium and a lot of other things, but they kept coming back to some really key ideas about ownership, that they really wanted to own that space. They wanted it to feel like it was theirs in some way. So we went from just having this garden part of it, which you can see in that picture on the left, which is a little spiral that they can walk and sort of calm themselves down. It went to being just that, to actually having 2 parts of it. So we have that on one end, and then we have an outdoor classroom on the other end, which is where the picture that you see in the middle, that was our opening ceremony for the outdoor classroom. So that's a circle of some great big beautiful boulders set right in the maple trees, so it's nice and shady in the spring. It was lovely. And so we have that on one side of the yard, our garden on the other side of the yard, and then the kids said, but really what we like to do is we like to be in the woods. So the grade 3s and 4s and I went out and we looked through the woods and we said, well, how could we do this that would be safe and positive and, you know, a good experience? And we came up with a plan. So they cleared out a path through the edge of the woods between these 2 spaces. So now they have this lovely thing of a circle on one end, a spiral on the other, and a path to walk in between them. So we have all the advantages of talking about what the trees are along the path and what things we can do on the path, how we can be on the path safely. They took 100% responsibility for clearing it and keeping it clear. We just gave them some rakes and they went out there and cleared things away from it. And so we used all the resources of our space. Educationally, it was fantastic. We've done talks about, we've used it for science, we've used it for social studies, we've used it for language, we've used it for drama, visual arts. And then, of course, for wellness, it's fantastic. Just the kids being outside is 90% of wellness for a lot of our kids. They just love being outside and they feel at home there. And walking this path is a very calming kind of experience. And so the great thing about this project is it's really just part 1. Because this year they're already saying, okay, we built our lovely garden, but there's nothing in it. So what are we going to plant in our garden? And how can we make it, how can we put our names on it? Like, how can we make it ours? So in this coming spring, we're going to do some multi-grade projects with classes on Fridays where they're going to decide, okay, do I want to be part of the planting? Do I want to grow some things? Or do I want to be part of the legacy part of our path? Do I want to build a path where we put our names on? How are we going to keep this going? So we have about 5 projects in mind for there. So that's what I wanted to end with, because that's one of the projects we're really proud of as a school. And I'd be happy to answer any questions through the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Maple Grove is an amazing place. I am the trustee for that area, and I've always enjoyed my visits there. One of the challenges of Maple Grove is the geography you serve. I believe it serves the most remote area of our board. Speaking from experience, if you get lost in the Lanark Highlands and you ask directions, the usual response is you can't get there from here. That's how remote it seems. Very historic. If you read the history of Lanark County, you'll hear all about Flower Station, Clyde Mills, and it was lumber country at one time. So I'll open the floor to questions from the trustees. Any questions on the presentation? Bushra.
Through you, Chair. First and foremost, thank you so much for that presentation. It was absolutely amazing. It looks like a little heaven, I guess you can say, with all of the work that you've done in the school. I did have a question about the EQAO scores. So for 2017 and 2018 school year, the school had 20% on the EQAO primary math. And I was just wondering how many students that was out of, like how many students were a part of that number?
8.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Any further questions? Ryan?
Through the chair, I'd like to hear more about the attitudinal data and the approaches taken towards with math.
So through the chair, that just comes from the EQAO attitudinal questions that come at the end. And so they're things like, how do you feel about math? Are you good at math? Do you feel confident answering math questions? Do you enjoy math class? And those results, in looking back 2 years, were very low. And over the last 2 years, they seem to be increasing. The students are saying they feel confident in math. They like math. They enjoy math class. They know how to approach math problems when they get them. I would say it appears that some of that confidence is not necessarily founded, but what it means is that they feel confident in approaching the problems, so we just have to figure out what is going wrong between that confident, I'm going to approach it, I'm going to put my energy into it, and the end result. And we have discovered some of the things that were going wrong, and we were focusing on some numeracy skills, certainly, and reinforcing multiplication and addition, subtraction, those things, but we were not relating them to all of the authentic real-world experiences that we should have been, including things like time and money, but also authentic situations. And so our kids were doing well when we were giving them the two numbers and asking them to add them, but they were not doing well when those numbers were in context. So that was helpful to look at that question by question and say, okay, now that we've improved people's feelings about math, let's see if we can now improve their skills as well.
McRae next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mrs. Keach, may I ask you how long, you said that you come to the school in January.
Yes.
Of this year or
Of last year, yes.
Okay. Let me, if I may.
Sure.
Just follow up. Just philosophically, how long do you suppose it takes a principal to be in a school before she can put her sort of stamp on it and say, there, just...
Through the chair, that's a very good question. I will say that I don't actually see it as putting my own stamp on a school. This is a community school that is so strong. The community is so strong that it's more a question for me of coming to the school and saying, what can I add to what is here? I see all of the benefits, all the assets of this school, and what can I bring to the school that will help enhance those or bring those out or support all of the great possibilities for this program.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Chair. Just want to commend Principal Keach for her excellent presentation, and it's obvious that your leadership has impacted the school greatly since you've arrived. My question is, how has the system supported you in your efforts to bring about change at that school?
Through the chair, I would say very significantly. We've had lots of good support in our school from intensive support teachers, and I have found that with the problems, I mean, when I came to the Ellen Elementary School with a largely secondary background, there were lots of things I didn't know, and lots of things I was assuming that were not the right things to be assuming. It does work quite differently. So we have a great support system here for that, both with other principals within the board and then with board staff as well. So in terms of practical terms, when I've needed something, when I've needed a resource or needed an answer or needed a question, there's lots of support at the board for that. Every time I've asked for something, I've got an answer back. It's not always exactly the answer I was looking for, but usually it was an answer that was more helpful to what I really needed to have happen. Maybe just not in the way that I was expecting, but in a better way. And so, yeah, I would feel that there's a lot of support for if you have a vision and you say, I want to try this exciting thing that I think will be great for kids. Everybody's on board for things that are great for kids.
Good to hear. Thank you.
To the phones. Anybody, any questions? None? I have one question, and bear with me, Mr. Chair. You speak of breaking the magic century mark in enrollment, yet you talk of a grade 5 class that had 3 students in it. Where's your bulk of your numbers right now?
We have, through you, we have 3 classes that are sort of, I mean, I suppose if I say out of the norm, then that sounds kind of silly because there's only 6 grades, but 10 students is about the average per grade. We do have a grade 6 bubble that has 17. We also have a senior kindergarten bubble that has 17, and then we have this sort of odd grade 5 class that only has 3.
Okay,
so.
Thank you. Any further questions? Trustee Bishop.
Okay, through the chair, can you project the enrollment for the next few years?
So through the chair, I generally trust the board's projections because they have more information than I do. Next year, we are going to have a bit of a dip because we're going to lose our large grade 6 class of 17. But we do have, at this point last year, we had 4 junior kindergartens enrolled, and it sort of moved its way up to 10. At this point, we already have 10 junior kindergartens enrolled, so it's possible we have another big bubble coming through. Yes, that's... I'll have to know the community better to know who's having babies. That's
Okay, no further questions? If not, thank you. And, oh yeah, put in a plug for your pancake breakfast on March the 5th.
Pancake breakfast on March the 5th from my amazing school council. They do it every Pancake Tuesday, and last year it was quite something to see. There are hundreds of people out eating pancakes, so if you are hungry, come on by. It's a deal you can't beat.
At the Civitan Club.
At the Civitan Club.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to our next presentation, Montague Public School Improvement Plan. And I'll ask David Coombs to make the introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, everybody. I'd like to ask Principal Paul Leroy to come forward and speak a bit about more about Montague Public School. There was a question by a trustee just recently regarding how long does it take a principal to be in a school to really get a sense of that school and to put their mark on it. Well, you've got another person here who's been there a grand total of 6 months. And you will, so you'll be able to answer that as well. Actually, if you may remember, those of you that were here last year, Paul was actually at this table in this exact same spot, almost a year to the date, with a different school. So he's a pro. Anyways, very happy to turn it over to Paul. Paul's been an engaged principal over the past few months. I was there just a few weeks ago. He certainly is very visible in classrooms and very involved in the literacy and numeracy work of the teachers. And I'm very excited to hear him speak today. Paul, take it away.
Thank you, Dave. Through you, Chair. I'm not sure that's the best thing to be back here again a year later, but here I am.
It's a great thing.
There we go. Good. Yeah, so through you, Chair. My name is Paul Leroy, and I am the very proud principal of Montague Public School, and I'm pleased to be here this evening to share with you my story of MPS. Montague Public School officially opened May 5th, 2005. Our current enrollment is 253 students from kindergarten to grade 8. Montague is located just east of Smiths Falls and is part of the Smiths Falls family of schools. There are 11 homerooms at Montague, and all in, we have over 25 committed staff members. Montague has 8 classrooms in the main building and 4 portables. We continue to assess projects to make the school better, including the refurbishment of our learning commons and schoolyard improvements. 5 buses service students to Montague Public School, and the average ride for students is 17.5 minutes. And I've been on a few of those buses, so I'm learning the area a little bit more too. At Montague, we are committed to creating a collaborative and inclusive community that recognizes the contributions of all students. Montague has demonstrated consistently strong results in the primary division on EQA. However, we are working to bolster outcomes and paying particular attention to 2017-18 results. Results indicate that school cohorts generally meet or maintain provincial standard or rise to the standard from grade 3 to grade 6. When we drill down into the data regarding specific types of questions, we find writing, language conventions, and mathematic thinking and inquiry questions offer an opportunity to move from level 2 to level 3. Through commitment to our school improvement plans for student achievement and wellness, we continue to pay attention to adjusting the trajectory for all strands in both primary and junior divisions. To chart a course for school improvement planning, we examine the data for opportunities in numeracy and literacy to move students from level 2 to 3. We've utilized a developmental continuum for both numeracy and literacy to narrow in on assessing student skills and charting an intentional course forward for instruction. A continuum enables us to engage in a dialogue with a common frame of reference using consistent language. In both numeracy and literacy, we are engaging in the iterative process of teaching a next level strategy by creating a simple assessment, gathering data, assessing if students are utilizing a more efficient strategy by measuring where focus students fall on our continuum, and by being very purposeful with the learning cycle, planning, acting, observing, and reflecting. And we're trying to be precise and nimble with our efforts. So for both literacy and numeracy, our if-then statement reads, if we create engaging learning experiences through a focus on integrating global competencies, critical thinking, and problem solving, and improve assessment and feedback practices through a focus on identifying and using learning goals and success criteria, then student engagement and achievement will improve as measured by monitoring our focus students. In literacy, our overall goal is to have 70% of students, as measured by our focus students, achieve grade level for specifically word choice, the specific expectation 2.3 in the Ontario curriculum. Through our work in literacy learning teams, we have identified a continuum for word choice. We completed diagnostic assessment to establish student understanding, design learning events based on the student need, and then complete a summative mini assessment to gauge student and educator progress and reflect on results. In numeracy, our overall goal is to have all students, as measured by our focus students, move at least one strategy along Alec Lawson's what to look for continuum of numeracy development in order to improve efficiency and fluency. We have been exploring ways to tackle addition problems using purposefully engineered activities and number talks. Intentional teacher moves revolve around selecting purposeful equations to ensure productive struggle in a scaffolded way. In our most recent classroom endeavor, teachers use splats to engage student thinking. With a splat, part of the representation is concealed and students are asked how many are showing and prompted to reason through how many are hidden. You might see 3 blue dots and a black blob that represents a cover over the remaining dots to equal 7. Students need to reason that there are 4 dots covered by the splat. Following these purposeful explorations that target specific addition and subtraction strategies, focus students engage in assessment that's videotaped. This enables staff to reflect on student thinking and rewatch tape for accuracy and precision. This is rich work, and again, we are leaning on the learning cycle, plan, act, observe, and reflect to share a common experience and engage in professional dialogue. Our next steps in the process for both literacy and numeracy are to engage in an article study on learning goals and success criteria, concentrate on using exemplars to moderate or deconstruct criteria, and practice taking curriculum expectations in creating learning goals. By prioritizing the social, emotional, physical, and cognitive well-being of students, we strive to create an optimal learning environment. To achieve this, we need to listen to all our stakeholders, especially the ones we impact most, our students. Montague Public School is making a concerted effort to listen to student voice. At Montague, we are engaged in positive behavioral interventions and support as a wellness initiative, as you just heard a little bit about from Nancy. PBIS is a process for teaching children appropriate behavior and providing the supports necessary to sustain that behavior. PBIS is proactive, multi-tiered framework that schools use to identify needs, develop strategies, and evaluate practices to build positive school culture. We are endeavoring to make explicit a common set of expected behaviors, teach what these actions and words look like and sound like, and then celebrate our successes by publicly acknowledging positive efforts. Our wellness goal reads, if we identify expected behaviors in different location scenarios at school, teach these behaviors, celebrate positive examples, and outline a consistent and transparent method of dealing with misbehavior, then the stress level and sour feelings that surround expectations of expected behavior will decrease and overall wellness will improve. To achieve this, we have gathered impressions from staff and students to establish a baseline of school culture, formed a champion team, a wellness learning team, used student and staff survey data to inform a rough draft of a matrix of expectations, and given staff and intermediate students the opportunity to provide input on our matrix. Our next steps include selecting one location and explicitly teaching expectations and launching a positive reinforcement campaign. We also use Tell Them From Me data to listen to student opinion. An intermediate student working group came together to create an action plan for student initiatives. The group outlined the following 2 concerns. Homework and time management are a leading cause of stress and struggle for intermediate students at our school, and generally there's a lower sense of belonging at our school for intermediate students. Our Tell Them From Me working group is currently engaged in seeking input from students and developing measures to support these initiatives. Some of the ideas include creating a homework club to alleviate stress around time management, and creating a survey with non-traditional activity options to offer for students to increase school belonging. So, 3 stories of character at Montague. On the way into the building in the morning and on the way out to buses in the afternoon, students at Montague hold the door open for others. This has been adopted as a routine, but happens on an impromptu basis as well. When I say, "Good morning, how are you today?" I almost always receive a return greeting. "How are you today, Mr. Leroy?" The second image shows the lost and found collection at Montague at its most unruly. Now, I've experienced a number of elementary schools where 2 to 4 sacks of items are recycled after months of persistent encouragement to reclaim. This is as bad as it gets at Montague. And finally, there's a crew of intermediate students who take the responsibility of preparing and running the sound system for events at school. At our Remembrance Day ceremony, the silent space between the last post and rouse was a bit longer than planned. Unfortunately, there were technical difficulties and 1 minute of silence became 4. Now, there's a certain respectful tone that organizers of such an event wish to maintain, and long stretches of silence can produce restlessness from 250 students. But the crowd at Montague was silent for 4 minutes. Why highlight these stories? As a school leader, these recollections provide information about the character of a school community. The stories act as a barometer for school improvement planning in that they are real-life illustrations of what students feel are important. I hear patience, kindness, compassion, empathy, resilience, tenacity, and much more in these stories. These character traits are the driver for school engagement, citizenship, and academic grit. The public should have great confidence that rural education is alive and well at Montague Public School.
Thank you. Once again, this is one of my schools. This was not prearranged. It's just pure coincidence. Montague kind of breaks the mold for a rural school. It's in the middle, basically on the edge of a hayfield. It's built full and beyond capacity, and yet it does not offer French immersion, which basically is a bit of an oddity. Its capture rate is somewhere in the range of 100%, and they have 4 portables. So as a rural school, it is certainly kind of setting a standard for attracting a solid population, because it's only, 10 minutes from Smiths Falls.
Yeah.
And in Smiths Falls, they do offer different programming. So, open the floor to questions from the trustees.
And it's just around the corner from there.
Bushra?
Through you, Chair. Again, thank you so much for the excellent presentation. It really highlights some of the excellent qualities of a rural school, similar to what the Chair has said. I did have a question on slide 6. It says that it tells us for me what our data tells us, that homework and time management are leading causes of stress, and also there's a lower sense of belonging within the school. And I was just wondering what steps the administration would be taking to help decrease these problems within the school.
Thanks for the question, through you, Chair. So I've found being a leader in the school, this is the first time I've led a K-8 school. So the intermediate students are in the school setting. And as I've mentioned to Superintendent Coombs, I'm really enjoying that. The tough part of it, or what we need to grapple with, is that we have 5-year-olds in the building and 13 or 12-year-olds in the building, and under the same roof may have similar or same rules, routines, that kind of thing. So our goal is to really listen to what they have, what their experience is, and see if we can work towards something that fits within our routines. So, for example, one of the things that the students mentioned right away is, could we not get just like an ice hut and just put it in the schoolyard as a way that we can get out of the wind? And I just don't, we don't always want to be outside playing. So we didn't do that, although I thought it sounded kind of cool. But we now offer, there's a really nice foyer at Montague, and one of the things at second recess, and you can have these conversations with intermediate students to say, listen, it's not something we can accommodate with our numbers in terms of staff and supervision, but all the time. But we certainly can at second recess. So at second recess, there's an option. They have an outside option. Often they'll have a sports option in the gym. And then there's also a sort of a social space inside, which they can choose to do as well. So I guess that's one of the pieces that we're trying to listen to what they're saying and then offer another option. To be able to show that for intermediate students, I think goes a long way as well, that they're being heard and we're trying something out. Doesn't have to be perfect all the time, and I'm finding that they're really good about that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Through you, Chair, thank you, Principal Leroy, for your presentation. My question pertains specifically to your grade 6 EQAO results from last year, and it is what external supports are you getting that would help you to address those results?
Through you, Chair. So in terms of we're always engaged as a system in in math learning, and so we certainly have that capacity to offer to staff and our students at the school. We have the ability to tap into SSP, student support partners, and other board personnel in order to help with everything from analyzing numbers to strategies. So there are a number of things that we can reach out and ask for sure, at the board level, and that are already an initiative for us in the board. A lot of it is, that teacher capacity building is really, really important, and to be able to build a relationship as a new administrator in the building. A lot of the work is that right now, doing that piece, knowing that we have all those other supports there as well. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Thank you. To the phones, any questions there? We still got everybody. Okay, Trustee McRae.
Thank you for the presentation. I guess I'd like to go back to Superintendent Coombs, alluded to how long you think it takes to put your vision on it, your view of. Any ideas or any thoughts? It's not a right or wrong answer. I'm just curious.
Sure. Through you, Chair. So I had a colleague once say to me, in the first year of an assignment, you're trying to get to know the problems. In the second year of an assignment, you're fixing the problems, and then in the third year of an assignment, you are the problem. So I hope that's not the way it always goes. I am making light, but I would say that, you know, within 3 years, you can make an impact in a school. I've had a few assignments now, and to be able to build the relationships, get to know the community, and to understand student need is really, really important. And it's not something that can be done quickly, as I learn all the time. So I'm going to throw out a 3-year, I'm going to say the 3-year term, but you know, you can be impactful within your first year, and but it certainly takes all those other things in order to make it work. So it takes building all of those other pieces, and getting a feeling with your staff that you are there, want to roll up your sleeve and get dirty.
Appreciate the answer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any further questions? None from the phones? Hearing none. Thank you very much for your presentation. I look forward to visiting your school.
Thank you so much. See you next year.
Okay. Item 10.03, and we'll ask Deanna Perry to introduce this next item.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are going to be bringing forward the annual health and safety report that has been prepared, and I will turn things over to Health and Safety Specialist Dennis Koluk in a few moments. But I'd just like to give a little bit of an overview of what it is that we're going to be presenting to you this evening. We do have specific duties with respect to reporting on health and safety, but beyond the duties that are present, we really look at this as an opportunity to present to you what we are doing with health and safety in our schools, in our buildings, to ensure that we are being proactive and creating a workplace environment where staff are safe and well cared for, so that they can then present themselves to their students and in their workplaces in a way that provides for optimum learning for our students. So this evening you're going to hear a number of items, but I would want to draw your attention to two in specific. The information that we have with respect to the reduction that we've had in our lost time due to injury, and also a reduction that we've had in injuries being reported overall. And this is really important because if we look at consistency for students and student learning, we invest a lot, we value our staff quite highly, and invest a lot of time and effort into all kinds of different development for our staff, including health and safety training. And when we have an employee who is injured and loses time, it does end up impacting on student learning because we have a break in consistency for students. Staff spend a lot of time developing relationships and getting to know their students. So when a staff member is not able to be in the classroom, there is an impact on students and their ability to have a consistent learning experience. So we are quite happy to see a reduction in the rates of accidents and lost time. And I'm going to turn things over to Health and Safety Specialist Dennis Koluk so that he can walk us through the report and then open up the floor to questions.
Thank you, Deanna. Through you, Chair, thank you again for allowing me to make the presentation tonight of our occupational health and safety injury results from 2017 and 2018 school year and the action plans that result from that. A lot of things I had written here, Deanna just covered, so I'm not going to say them again. But one thing I do want to spend time on is obviously we've had some reductions this year, this past year, which is fantastic. But it is a collaborative effort, right? When I go into the schools, I see the effort being made by the principals, the educators, the EAs, and they bring concerns up, and they are looking for better ways to do things in the schools, safer ways to do things. And it also the Joint Health and Safety Committee, which we have, which is active within the schools and doing a number of things, a number of initiatives to reduce injuries in the school. So it's a very collaborative approach. So I'm going to be covering the injury performance over 2017 and 18. Great, thank you. So some of the priorities we're going to cover, we're going to review the priorities, actions that we set up, right? So this is the prevention part of our programs, what we do each year to reduce injuries within the schools, and cover the results from the 2017 and 18. Highlight some learning points and share some of the action plans that we have currently in place for this year. Now, the source of our data for this information comes from the School Board Cooperative, Inc. And as you see there, they are a non-for-profit cooperative organization established to provide advice and guidance to workers' compensation, health and safety, which we're talking about today, and attendance and disability management. They currently provide this service to most of the school boards in Ontario. And we are considered to be in one of the larger school boards. There's 3 categories, small, medium, and large, and we're in the large category. And again, the data you're looking at here is all information or all data that's been submitted to WSIB in Form 7s, and that we're submitting that period between September 1st, 2017 and August 31st, 2018. That's the period we're looking at. One thing you're going to see too is something called accident frequencies as we go through this, and it has to do with lost time and no lost time accidents. And a frequency, you can see this for our school board and also for the peer school boards that we have, is the number of total accidents times 100 divided by the full-time equivalent, or roughly the average number of employees. So the first graph we're showing here, the first data we're showing, is the combined total accident frequency. So this is lost time and no lost time accidents that took place at our school board. We're showing a reduction here from 143 from the previous year to 112 for the year that we're looking at here, 2017 and 18. And if you look at the graphs themselves for 16-17, you'll see that our total was 143. We've dropped down to 112. Under the 17-18 graph, you'll see that our average, our frequency there was 3.61, and our peer group, which is all the schools within the large school board area, was 5.03. So we're doing better than our peer group. Now this is for lost time accidents, this one, so only lost time. The other one was the whole capture group. This is just lost time. Lost time accident is an indicator of accident severity and may result in medical or workman's compensation costs to the board. Lost time accidents also interrupt classroom consistency for students, which may introduce challenges in maintaining an engaging learning environment in support of student achievements. We also looked at a reduction here by 7 or by 10%. And you see the numbers there. So last year we had 69. This year, or the past year, we had 62. We're looking at a frequency of 2, and our peer group was 2.59. The next one is no lost time accidents. And again, we're showing a reduction here. So no lost time accidents do not result in employees losing time from work. However, they can cause workplace disruption since workers may not be able to function at an effective level due to reduced physical wellness. And we're showing a reduction here of 24 or 32%. So last year, or the year before, 16-17, we had 74, and then 17-18, we had 50 injuries for no lost times. And again, our peer group is at 2.4 for the frequency, and we're at 1.61. So those are the raw numbers. Now we look at some accident analysis, right? We want to find out exactly where these injuries are taking place or how they're taking place. What are the causes of the incidents? So as we go down, we're looking at the different causes on the left-hand side. We're looking at 16-17, 17-18, and the change between the 2 years on the far right-hand column. So for slips, trips, and falls, that's our major accident we have within our schools as far as causes go. We looked at 28 last year, 17-18. Struck by and against, we're looking at 27. And aggression is 20. Ergonomics, 17. Others, 11. And TMS and CMS, that's traumatic mental stress and chronic mental stress, we're looking at 9. Gives us a total of 112. Now, traumatic mental stress and chronic mental stress are new to our charts, so I'm just going to quickly spend a little time on that. New to the reporting for this one, anyways. We didn't have them in the past. Effective for chronic mental stress, anyways, January 1st, 2018, Ontario government expanded the allowable claims for WSAB and have included this. And it generally means typically based on interpersonal conflicts that meet the definition of harassment, and a person can claim for CMS at that point. Traumatic mental stress claims typically based on witnessing or being an object of a horrific incident or violence having to do with your job or the workplace. So we further broke that down. So we want to look at what the slips, trips, and falls, exactly where they're taking place. So we broke that down. We found that 25% on the right-hand side took place in parking lots. We also looked at classrooms at 21%, schoolyards at 18%, and hallways and stairs at 14%. The package that you also received has further details in it as far as causes go. If you look at that package, you'll see that 32% of these slips, trips, and falls were also due to ice or snow, slipping on ice or snow. And a further 18% had to do with wet floors in hallways or classrooms. And again, our second largest category, struck by and against. We're seeing that most of those took place in the classroom, which makes sense, right? That's where most of our people spend time as far as working. 26% took place in the schoolyards, and facilities, work areas were 15%, so that'd be our custodial staff. And again, within your package, you'll see some of the causes being at 33%, resulting of being struck in the head by balls or other sport equipments. So frisbees, we've seen that too, right? And 30% classroom furniture or equipment, so running into furniture, being struck by furniture or equipment that maybe breaks or collapses in the school classroom too. So the year before, we looked at the different types of accidents, the causes, and we put programs in place to address those. So in 17-18, here's the programs we had in place, and here's what we did. Here's what we completed within those programs. So we did focus on our main accident causes, which were slips, trips, and falls, aggression, and struck by and against. And what we completed there was communication to the of our results, our annual accident causation performance, to the schools. So when they do their monthly health and safety inspections, they can focus on the types of accidents they're having, right? So focus on slips, trips, and falls when you're walking around the school in your monthly accident inspections. Accident inspections, by the way, are required to be completed on a monthly basis by law, so they're doing those. The Joint Health and Safety Committee and Superintendents of Education also track those workplace inspections. So we made sure that they're being completed on a monthly basis within the schools, within all workplaces within the board. And we looked at too, are they being effective? What are they putting corrective actions in place, and are they following through and correcting those different hazards in the workplace that they found? And then we also did last year we did professional activity days in October and April, and we spent time on those, giving the workers and the administration tools. So when they see slips, trips, and falls, what do they look like? What are the potential for those in the schools? What are the hazards for struck by and against? What do those look like in the schools? And aggression assessments. So we try to give them tools, and we did those talks. And workplace aggression and violence, injury, and hazard reporting too. So we're starting to capture more of that information now. We're doing more reporting on that. So that gives us an opportunity to put corrective actions in place to reduce those. And anytime we do workplace inspections, the main objective of those is to reduce hazards in the workplace, to reduce injuries in the workplace. And that's what we're still focusing on. And the other two, we had three. So the other two was a collaboration between the Joint Health and Safety Committee and the management team to update and establish new health and safety programs that meet legislation and school board needs. So we do have guidelines and programs in health and safety, and we updated 5 of those last year. And we also reporting on workplace hazards and workplace injuries on an online reporting program. So we had paper copies for all our accident investigations, and we've gone to an online system now so we can capture more information. and better, hopefully better information is what we're planning to do. So that started last year. And so that was last year. This year, current year, what are we doing as far as action plans go for preventative programs? We continued our commitment for health and safety inspections to focus on prevalent accident types and their preventions. So between the management and the Joint Health and Safety Committee team, we're making improvements to our workplace inspections, making them more effective and focusing on that. Workplace inspections are hands-on guidance, and our Joint Health and Safety Committee members visit the schools twice a year to review their inspections and assist them with hands-on instruction if they can, and assistance and tools. We also looked at our annual health and safety rep training. Every spring we do training with all our health and safety reps and their administrative teams, and we make sure that we spend time on what's important in their schools, so slips, trips, and falls, reducing those and what that looks like and how we can better do inspections to address that. Struck by and against also. And then this past year, we spent time also, the Joint Health and Safety Committee did, creating instructional videos on how to do health and safety inspections in the schools. So now we have a library of videos they can go to, and if they walk into a wood shop and they want to know exactly what that type of hazards you should be looking for in a wood shop, there's a video that points them out and says, this is the type of hazard, this is what you want to see on a wood lathe, this is what you don't want to see. This is a good plug. This is a plug that needs to be replaced as far as electrical goes, right? All those things are included in that. We have culinary. We have just regular classrooms too. We spend a lot of time on that. So those are, again, good tools, quality tools to be used in the workplace. We're also continuing to upgrade or update and provide new health and safety programs and guidelines to address needs in the workplace. And legislative needs too. Some things change too in the workplace. And the final one, we're also looking at continuing our workplace violence risk programs and reassessments of board buildings. So again, a very important program. We're spending an emphasis when we go to the schools looking at their BMS safety plans, their notification of potential risk injuries. We're looking at make sure the forms are completed. We're helping them get them completed. We're also looking to make sure that they've been communicated out to the different staff and the occasional staff coming in too. So we're working with them to help them make that happen. We're also emphasizing on the worker participation and behavior management system training. Spec Ed provides BMS training on the PA days, and we're encouraging that to take place. Reassessment of site-specific workplace violence assessments. Again, that's legislative requirements. We're getting those done. And further use of our ParkLane web-based tool to create customized online forms for reporting and collecting and sharing information within our board. So we've started already the collecting information and reporting for accidents and injuries and hazards in the workplace. And now we're looking at the safe school forms and putting them online too, so to get rid of the paperwork. And that's a Ministry of Education need there. Any questions?
Trustee Danaher.
Through the chair, I'm just wondering whether you have all that data with the injuries by job group. By that I mean teacher, EA, custodial.
Yeah, we do have some of that for sure. Yes, yeah.
And does that drive some of your efforts in terms of?
Yeah, it does. So, for example, the slips, trips, and falls, the largest through you chair. The biggest group we have, which is no surprise, is elementary, because that's the biggest group we have too, right, as far as workers go. So we do spend more time with them when we do their day. In the spring, when we do our health and safety rep training, we ensure that we spend more time with them on how to do corrective actions and how to find corrective actions for slips, trips, and falls and things like that in their workplace. Yeah, because it's important, right? It's important to understand that. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, just further to the response, just wanted to draw trustees' attention that there's a second attachment to tonight's report, and there is a breakdown by employee group that I think will help.
Any further questions? Trustee Scudder?
Through you, Chair. Just an observation. I'm aware of the fact that recently, due to weather conditions, principals have chosen to keep their students inside. If you look at slide 10, oh no, sorry, slide 9. It would appear that by keeping them in the school, they're actually in more danger than being out of the schoolyard. 14% plus, what is it, 25%, 21%? So.
Through you, Chair, if I can just add to the comment, the decision to keep children inside is based on weather conditions typically. So I'll give an example. In the extreme winds of Monday, many of our schools had children stay inside because we didn't want the children to be, or our staff as well, to be hit by potentially flying debris, or they're in wide open spaces. Those strong wind gusts can actually push some of our smaller children, and so it could be dangerous. So that decision is based on safety for staff and students. Within the other items that we're looking at are situations that are occurring, not necessarily related to weather.
Through you, Chair. I'm just wondering though, where do we draw the line in not allowing students to be outside? I mean, how are we going to, for example, now this recent weather that we've had where there's been a lot of ice, is that a decision that's made at your level, or is that a decision that's a school-based decision?
Mr. Chair, that is based on the conditions that are in the schoolyard in each one of our individual schools. There are times where perhaps we are going to send out communication, and I will speak to the wind gusts that we were having that were upwards of 70 plus kilometers an hour. I did send a communication to principals saying to use their best judgment in determining whether students should be outside. We also have some guidelines that we follow with respect to when wind chills get to a point where it is not safe due to frostbite risk, that students wouldn't be going outside. So we want our children to be outside on the recess yard. It is good for them to be out on the recess yard, and there probably are not many principals out there who would want to make a decision to keep students inside for any more time than is necessary.
So just a point of clarification, the report that we just received is staff engineer report, dealing with the people that work for us.
I understand.
Okay. To the phones, any questions, John or David or Lisa?
I do have a question through you, Chair. And I'm not sure if one that Dennis can answer, but perhaps Superintendent Perry or the director could answer it. When we look at action number 3, workplace violence risk program and the reassessment of buildings, there's a lot of emphasis there on reporting and notification and management training, etc. But what are we doing to deal with the behavior modification of the students who caused some of this violence?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do a lot within our schools to try to help students who have challenges with self-regulation. There are many different supports that are put into place. BMS is a training for staff so that they're able to manage in situations where students might be demonstrating some aggression because they're having challenges with self-regulation. We've heard 2 presentations today that spoke about positive behavior intervention strategies happening in schools. All of our schools have wellness plans that they've put into place, many addressing self-regulation in schools. A lot of professional learning has gone into preparing staff with respect to self-regulation and how to help our students who are having those self-regulation challenges. And there's been a lot of information that has been shared as well through the special education department. There's a lot of information and a lot of training that goes into all that we do with our students. And a lot of work is done with individual students and families as well. So there's a lot of support in place for the challenges that some of our students do present.
Thank you. Trustee McCray?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe Superintendent Perry has answered.
Okay. Any further questions from the floor or from the phones? If not, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
And moving on. The next item is item 10.04. It's a response to the board motion from the January 30th board meeting 2019, and I'll ask Richard Onley to present the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, trustees. Before I respond to the original board motion, I would like to take a few minutes to review where we are in the current business cycle with this slide. You'll recall this slide from our January presentation of the revised budget and financial forecast number 1. We're at the end of February, and staff are currently preparing financial forecast number 2, as you'll see in the blue box, and it will report a forecast of our financial results up until our year end, which happens at August 31st, 2019. We'll be presenting financial forecast number 2 to you on March 27th. And financial forecast number 3, which will be the final one, will be presented to you in July. While we're preparing financial forecast number 2, we've also commenced our budget preparation for the 2019-20 fiscal year. And this is represented at the bottom right of the page with the green boxes on our timeline. Our financial reporting provides transparency and accountability to the public for the board's stewardship of scarce resources. In preparing financial forecasts, a comprehensive review is made of the drivers which impact revenues and expenses. The theme of tonight's presentation focuses on the expenses. The diagram on this slide provides the key components of our financial forecast. The major factors that impact on our expenses are analyzed, they're updated, and they're consolidated into each forecast. Staff will review and update salary and benefits, which account for 75% of overall operating expenses. Updated projections are gathered from school principals and other department budget owners. And updated projections are also submitted by related party organizations. So these groups would include the Champions for Kids Foundation, STEO, or the Student Transportation of Eastern Ontario, and the Upper Canada Leger Centre for Education and Training. In addition to our formal financial statements, a monthly financial report is provided as an information item in your regular agenda package. The format of the report highlights key measurable areas, including instruction, administration, transportation, pupil accommodation, and then other expenses. A similar outline format has been used as the basis for this evening's presentation. Prior to the distribution of the monthly report, there is a robust internal process where we review and analyze and take a look at the financial results relative to our approved budget. The next financial report will include spending up to January 31st, and it will be available in the March 6, 2019 agenda package. Trustees also receive a monthly report of capital and facilities project updates as a regular part of the ongoing reporting process. As of the January 30th, 2019 meeting, the Board of Trustees approved the following motion: that senior administration bring a report to the Board on year-to-date spending and percentage of budget spent in current areas for the first regular meeting in February 2019. As part of the Finance Department's process of preparing the monthly statement, A review is made of year-to-date spending, and variances are analyzed for reasonableness. Any anomalies falling outside the expected spending patterns are examined, and they're brought to the attention of senior management and actioned. The information contained within this report compares actual expenses as of December 31st, 2018 to the revised budget figures. Due to the varied nature of the expenses, we distinguish between operating and capital expenses. At a summary level, we're looking at spending from September to December. This represents 4 months or 1/3 of the year. Actual operating expenses as an overall percentage of our budget shows that we've spent approximately 1/3 of our budgeted operating expenses. As you get into detail, you'll note that some expenses aren't always on a straight line, equal monthly basis. Our operating expenses for the first 4 months of the year are on budget. Most capital expenditures are performed in the summer months to minimize the amount of disruption to students, as well as taking advantage of the warmer weather. Therefore, as you'll see here, you'll expect the capital budget balance to be a higher number. Instruction expense contains the largest portion of the operating budget. It represents 75% of the total operating expenses. The percentage of the operating budget remaining is what we would expect at December 31st, 2018. The instructional area consists of all the instructional staffing related costs, including teachers, EAs, ECEs, principals, vice principals, office staff, and other classroom instructional supports such as supplies and PD. The administration and governance costs include operating board offices and central facilities, our board-based staff, expenditures and costs required to meet statutory, regulatory, and service commitments. The year-to-date spending is in line with expectations for this point in the year. Transportation costs include all costs related to the home-to-school student transportation that's provided by the STEO Consortium. It also includes our portion of the STEO administrative costs. You should note that there is a $3 million increase in the budget expenses between the original and revised budget numbers, and this is the primary source of the financial pressure that we're feeling currently. The year-to-date spending of our remaining revised budget meets our expectations. The pupil accommodation expenditures consists of costs of operating school facilities such as heat and hydro. It also includes repairs, maintenance, and school renovations. Now, a large part of these expenditures are weather dependent, and the budget percentage available is expected to be higher at this time of year. To provide a comprehensive report to the board, we have included the year-to-date expenses from related parties. As I outlined earlier, this includes Champions for Kids, the Upper Canada Leger Centre for Education and Training, and also school-generated funds. These amounts are not viewed as a source of operational flexibility for the board. Mr. Chair, this concludes the presentation on the year-to-date actual spending to budget and remaining budget percentage staff report. Thank you.
So, thank you. Open the floor to questions. To the phones. No questions?
I have a question. Well, I have a comment first.
Okay, go with you, David.
So my comment, and I guess there's a question in here, is in 2016, we had a similar situation where we had a $1.5 million deficit in January 2016. At that time, we passed a motion to have a report come back to find some savings. Is there anything that would be different from this year than what was handled in 2016?
Through you, Mr. Chair. It's fundamentally our challenge is coming from steel and the deficit that we were placed in as a result of the arbitration costs. So that would be one of the differences. In terms of finding savings, as we're preparing our financial forecast number 2, this is where we'll be able to focus in on different savings and changes, frankly, in budget items that we prepared, and as we come close to the end of the year, we get more accuracy. So there are a number of items that we have that by the time we have financial forecast number 2, I think we'll have some very good accuracy. It won't get rid of the steel deficit, but I think on operations, it's looking quite positive.
Okay. That answer your question, David?
Somewhat. So, may I follow up?
Yes.
So when I look at the year-to-date spending budget versus actuals for 2016, 2015-2016 school year, that report that's included, there's nothing really that varies from what we see this year. So, fast forward a few years, and we seem to be on target for this time of the year, ending December. So having said that, based on our recommendation, or based on a motion that we passed in January of 2016, a report came forward in February, which was postponed to March 2016, where administration was able to identify $800,000, over $800,000 of savings. So I'm of the belief then, if the spending patterns are the same now as they were then I will be putting a motion forward to ask for the same thing and to find those savings and report back to the board.
Chair, may I speak for a moment, please?
You have 2 people on the speaker list. You have Donnie and you have John now.
Right. John?
Trustee McDonald, you raised an interesting point. In 2015, 2017, yes, we did identify savings in the amount of over 800,000. And I think, to be honest with you, if we need to, we will do it again. I am asking at this point, although I will be speaking about this further in private session, but I ask your patience, because there are a number of words here that begin with W. And the first one is, what if? What if we get help? The second one is, what if we don't get help? And the third one is, when? And my understanding, and I will elaborate further in private session on this, is that there is a form of assistance on the way. It is unspecified at this time. And we have been asked to be very patient and to wait. And I'm waiting until at least the end of March. And I'm hoping that the situation will be more clear at that point. if we do get help, we will still need to accumulate the savings to which you refer. And I think we will have time to do that. So I'm asking for patience.
Speaker.
Okay. Trustee Cram?
Thank you, Chair. Slide 9. Relatively small, but the capital expense on that one seems to be the only one that we've overspent so far and have gone beyond the percentage allowable. Can you elaborate a little bit more for me?
It was for roof repairs that were done. And although it is overspent, it was also fully funded on the other side.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion coming forward? No?
Mr. Chair?
Yes?
I'd like to bring a motion forward, and I will add a comment. I respect the comments of the chair, McAllister, but what my motion is looking for is not a specific amount. It is certainly measures. It is certainly an action plan. My motion would be that the Upper Canada District School Board direct the director to bring back a report in the month of March regarding what measures will be in place to manage expenses such that the deficit of the budget passed in June, so 1.8, be reduced. So reflecting only on what we had passed, not considering anything that would be in occurrence with an arbitration ruling. So this is only reflective of the fact that we did pass a deficit budget in June, and I would like to see measures that we would reduce that deficit within the year. I will be happy to move that.
We have a mover. Do we have a seconder? I will read the motion. Just for no, okay. I had it. Now it's gone. Okay. Just for clarification, okay? That the Upper Canada District School Board direct the director to bring back a report in the month of March regarding what measures will be in place to manage expenses such that the deficit of the budget passed in June of 1.8 million be reduced within the year. Moved by Trustee McDonald. Do I have a seconder?
Trustee Swan will second it.
Seconded by Trustee Swan. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Anyone else care to speak to the motion before we call the vote? Trustee Barry?
Just through the chair, could someone elaborate a little bit more on exactly what the motion means? I'm not real clear.
Trustee McDonald, do you want to address that?
Sure. So the motion that we have before us that brought this report to us was one to see, where are we in our spending? And so based on this report that we see in front of us, I think there's an opportunity for us that we have some potential to find savings within the remainder of the year so that we can reduce the deficit of the budget that was passed in June. You recall, as trustees may not have been present at that time or part of the original board that passed the budget, but the budget was passed with a deficit of 1.8 million. We've since incurred additional expenses within the year that is moving that deficit even further. I want to make sure that we address the budget that was passed at a deficit of 1.8 million by the previous board.
So if my interpretation is right, you're asking that we only address the original deficit as passed in June.
Well, I'm asking administration to bring back a report that we can find savings that will help us address the deficit of 1.8 million.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Director, do you want to comment on this?
No comments, Mr. Chair.
No, okay. Trustee Graham?
Through you, Chair, to David. Are you looking at reducing the entire 1.8 down to 0, or are you looking at just reducing a portion of that 1.8?
So the motion is only indicating that we're asking staff to bring back savings or potential savings. I have not put a number on it specifically because I think I understand that there's an opportunity to find it based on what happened several years ago, but I don't want to dictate what administration should, could, or might do. I would give them an opportunity to provide that report to us.
Thanks, David. That clarifies what I was looking for.
Okay, unless there's further questions, I'm going to... yes, go ahead.
Yeah. I wonder if Trustee McDonald would be amenable to an amendment to the date. I think in the motion you specified the end of March. May I suggest that the end of April might be more timely and helpful? Would that be a friendly amendment?
What's... okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
My only concern is that if we wait till the end of April, then we are significantly through the course of the year, and it would then hamper our ability to find some savings. We're certainly into a majority of the year, and I think if we start to take measures now, or if the administration can find ways to take measures now, then we might be able to achieve those savings. So I'm thinking the end of March would provide us that opportunity to have that. And again, it's certainly open, so the administration can come back with that report.
Director Sliwa.
Mr. Chair, through you, as you heard in the presentation tonight, financial forecast number 2 is a month away. That would be providing the board with up-to-date information based on our research about our expenses to date. That would most likely put the board in a better position to see, well, what would be our commitments that we see for the next quarter. And because we have done that research, presented to you what the update is on what deficit the board would be carrying at that point, if any, then it would be an opportunity to perhaps bring back a report that might have a bit more focus that would help the board to have some more specific information. That would be a staff perspective based on what the conversation is so far.
Okay. John?
Chairman, yeah.
Yes.
Just add one more thing if I could. The assumption in the motion is that there are savings that can be made between now and the end of the budget year. And that may or may not be so, but we have quite a number of fixed costs. Commitments have been made, and our debt is operational. I just don't know how that can be found at this time. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be found, but I would love the other sponsors to be able to work on this.
Mr. Chair, may I comment?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to bring people back to the motion. So the motion is not indicating that we save a particular amount or that we do certain things. But what we are asking administration to come back with a plan and a strategy associated to it. The reality is that it doesn't mean that we have to accept it. I mean, if administration finds savings, but they provide a rationale that it will impact the work of the board, then it certainly is something that we can continue to do. I think without the information, it's very difficult for us to determine whether we should or shouldn't do something. The information is required. It's kind of an immediate impact if we see something that we can do. But if it's going to have a detriment to the work of the board, we may choose to continue to go down that path because it's the good work of the board. I think the information needs to be shared before we can decide whether we have fixed costs or operational costs that will prevent us from finding savings.
Okay, back to John for a minute. Are you proposing an amendment to the motion or not?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm going to deem it an unfriendly amendment. Is that correct? It's changing essentially. So, what's that?
David has to accept it for it to be friendly. Otherwise,
no, that's why.
Otherwise, it goes to a straight amendment.
Yeah. Okay, David, would you accept that as a friendly amendment, yea or nay? David?
Sorry, I was on mute. My concern is that if we, and I raised it earlier, is that if we continue to wait till the end of April, we've lost opportunity. So, you know, I said the month of March. I would be happy if it was the first meeting in April. That's not going to do much more damage, but I would be willing to go that far.
Okay, I will take that as a no.
Could I just speak to my amendment,
yes,
please?
John.
I don't disagree with Trustee McDonald at all on this one, frankly. And I don't think that my amendment precludes work beginning now on the intensive motion. But I am asking for more time for reporting toward the end of April.
Okay, so you have moved a motion and an amendment. I am looking for a seconder for that motion to amend. To delay the report until the month of April rather than the month of March is...
Through you, Chair, is this the first week of April that we're amending it to now? The first meeting?
No, I would say the second meeting.
Second meeting. No seconder? Motion to amend dies. We now revert back to the original motion. Any further discussion? If not, I will read the motion. That the Upper Canada District School Board direct the director to bring back a report at the end of March regarding what measures will be in place to manage expenses such that the deficit of the budget passed in June, $1.8 million deficit, be reduced within the year. I will ask you to cast your votes. Okay. Motion has passed. Thank you for your report. And moving on. Next item on the list is our committee reports. 11.01, report from the Special Education Advisory Committee. And I will ask Trustee Danaher, who sits on the committee, to bring the report to the board.
Thank you, Bill. Last week, on 19th February, we met at SEAC at Smiths Falls. Beautiful school, by the way. And we had two people that had been contracted or engaged by the board to review our special education program, Shirley Rock and Moira Sinclair. And the evening began with our UCDSB philosophy and beliefs about spec ed, presented by Superintendent Ferguson. Good job.
Thank you.
And the intent was to tie those beliefs and philosophy into our plan. And at that point, when that was finished, Shirley and Moira took over the meeting with all of our stakeholders and sort of presented they didn't present, they were looking for information. They were trying to gather information on what we have, what we would like to see. And remember, this was from all the stakeholders. Questions like, what do we do well in spec ed? And answers that everybody were giving were things like, we put the kids first. Kids are always first. We talked about expectations of parents versus reality and resources. The commitment to keep kids the central focus. There were no answers. It wasn't a quiz, there wasn't a test, it was just an event for them to gather information on things that we thought we did well. Working with our community partners was something that we thought we did well. The importance of support, the importance of having the support for those kids and all kids in our system. So the rest of the evening was spent gathering the information by Shirley and Moira, and they're continuing to do that throughout the board. They told us today, we met them today, and they told us that they have visited 15 to 20 schools to this point in time, and they are in the process of gathering information to be able to make a report for the board and where we are headed and in spec ed in our programming and how we were going to deliver it. Very interesting evening.
Thank you. Anybody have some really tough questions for him?
Not tough ones.
Okay, seeing none. Anybody on the phone? Okay, moving on. We have the next item. Let me get my computer up to date here. There we go. Oops, not yet. Okay, scheduled business. Section 12, we have 3 motions, and I will ask Deanna again to introduce Dennis.
Through you, Mr. Chair, as per usual in terms of review of policies, we're bringing forward 3 policies this evening that have been reviewed through the Joint Health and Safety Committee, and I will turn things over to Dennis to walk us through the 3 policies and discuss.
Sure. So as per the Occupational Health and Safety Act in Ontario, we need to prepare 3 policies. We're going to review those today and then maintain them. And maintaining those means we annually review those and then we redate them more or less, right, and put them on, right? If there's any legislative changes that take place during that year, we update them to meet those requirements. These three policies that we're looking at tonight, there's been no changes take place in the Act or the related regulations, so we're just going to review them. They've gone through the Joint Health and Safety Committee, and they've recommended no changes either. So these are our occupational health and safety policies for workers. So the first one, did we bring those up again or not? I'm not.
No. Where are they?
They're on board docs.
Okay.
Yeah. 1 second here. Well, the first one's going to be policy, depends which one you open.
At the bottom of the report, they're there.
The first one could be 226, safe workplace and workplace harassment. Thank you. So we'll just scroll down to the definition 2.1. I'm not going to read through the whole document, but in this case, harassment is what this one was looking at. So again, so 226, safe workplaces and workplace harassments. Harassment means engaging in a course of vexatious comment or conduct that is known or ought to reasonably known to be unwelcome, contrary to any ground prescribed by the Ontario Human Rights Code. Harassment can include sexual harassment as defined and pursuant to the code and the Ontario Occupational Health and Safety Act itself. So with this one, we're looking at, this is covered under Section 32 of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And again, the employer is required to prepare the policy, which we have, and then review the policy as often as necessary, but at least annually, which we are right now.
Okay, that's the first one?
That's the first one.
Okay, well, as everyone has presented, we will do the motion. Looking for a motion to approve policy 226, safe workplace harassment, with a review date of February 27th, 2019. Need a mover? Trustee Cram. Seconder to the motion?
McDonald.
McDonald. Trustee McDonald. I ask you to cast your ballots.
Question.
Oh, questions, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. When I read it, Dennis, I'm assuming that there are no changes to it from previous years?
Yeah, there's been no changes to these ones, yes, this one at all. None of them actually have changes to them, through you, Chair.
Okay, this may be simple, Mike. Through the
Go
chair,
ahead,
can I ask
thank
a
you.
question? Ought reasonably to know to be unwelcome contrary to any ground prescribed by the Ontario Human Rights Code. That wouldn't be a typo, would it? Or,
No, so it's under two sections here, Ontario Human Rights Code and the Ontario Occupational Health and Safety Act.
I've never heard ground used in that word, in that context before. Is that's the proper wording, sir?
That's the proper wording, yes. Yeah.
Thank you, through the chair.
Okay, thank you. No further questions? None from the phones? If not, ask you to cast your ballots.
Oh.
Kind of information overload here.
Through you, Chair?
Yes.
I know we're voting, but shouldn't it say 2020?
We reviewed them tonight, did we not?
With a review date? Okay, sorry, my apologies.
Still waiting for some votes. Trustee Danaher, Trustee Swan. Okay. Now we have 9 in favor, motion carried. Proceed with the next one.
All right, so the next one is violence in the workplace, policy 421. Through you, Chair, just one of the things we look at, where the Ministry of Labor would come in under the Occupational Safety Act into the workplace and look in the workplace for updated policies, right? So they look for these 3 policies and they look for a current date within the year. So this is another one. This is under workplace violence. And the definition as defined under the Occupational Safety Act for workplace violence is A, the exercise of physical force by a person against a worker in a workplace that causes or could cause physical injury to the worker. B, an attempt to exercise physical force against a worker in the workplace that could cause physical injury to a worker. And C, a statement or behavior that is reasonable for a worker to be interpreted as a threat to exercise physical force against a worker in the workplace that could cause physical injury to a worker. And again, we're looking to update this. So what the requirements are under the Act, are under Section 32 of the Act, say the employer shall prepare a policy with respect to workplace violence, which we have, and we've had it in place for quite some time, and then must review that policy as often as necessary, but at least annually. So that's why we're doing this tonight. And that's it, Chair.
Okay. We will need a mover and a seconder again. Moved by trustee Schooler. Seconded by trustee Barry, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 421, violence in the workplace, with a review date of February 27, 2019. Any questions? None from the phones? Seeing none, I ask you to cast your vote online. Okay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Proceed.
Yes. So, and the final one, the third one, occupational health and safety, policy 424. And it states there, the Upper Canada District School Board is committed to providing a safe and healthy working and learning environment for all staff, students, and other authorized occupants of the board property. Recognizing that health and safety is of immense importance, the board shall comply with all health and safety related legislation and regulations applicable to the board. The cooperation and participation of all board employees is required to maintain a safe and healthy work environment. And under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, Section 25, it states an employer shall prepare and review at least annually a written occupational health and safety policy and develop and maintain a program to implement that policy. This is the policy, and earlier tonight we talked about the action plans we put in place as far as implementing that policy goes. So we covered it all tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Again, we need a mover and a seconder. Moved by trustee Barry, seconded by trustee McCray, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 424, occupational health and safety, with a review date of February 27th, 2019. Any questions? Anybody on the phone? Seeing none, I ask you to cast your online vote. Okay, still waiting for trustee Barry.
Well, I've got the policy in front of me, but I don't have the vote in front of me.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to section, thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all.
Moving on to section 12.02, ratification of Special Education Advisory Committee appointment. And I will ask Ron Ferguson, Superintendent of Schools, to make this presentation.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. The purpose of this presentation is to present for the board the ratification of the name of a local association representative for appointment to the Special Education Advisory Committee, also known as SEAC. And this request is in accordance with the Education Act, subsection 57.1, and the requirements of Regulation 46497. So this individual has been nominated and put forward to serve as a member of Special Education Advisory Committee. I can inform the board that all of the relevant requirements have been met, and the individual is Mark DeRose, and he represents the Rural Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorders FASD Support Network. SEAC, as everyone here knows, is made up of local associations. And this is an association that we have not had and do not have representation from, so we were pleased to have them put their name forward and hoping that they are ratified this evening.
Okay, looking for a motion. Mover to the motion, trustee Danaher, seconded by trustee McCray, that the Upper Canada District School Board ratify the appointment of Mark DeRose, Rural Fetal Alcohol Syndrome Disorder representative to the Special Education Advisory Committee. And I ask you to cast your ballots. Motion is passed. Thank you very much. And we get to flip the pages. Item number 12.03, creation of a policy committee, and I will turn it to my wingman here, Trustee Crown.
Thank you, Chair. I believe there was a motion presented on the floor. It would be moved by myself and seconded by Trustee Barry. Want to read it and then I'll speak to it? I'll read it and then I'll speak to it. You're the Chair.
Yeah, you can speak to it.
Oh, speak to it first?
Yeah.
Okay. Policy is the governance of the trustees, and it's laid out by the Education Act. And if I go back to 2014-15, when I first came on the board, policy was always reviewed by the trustees. It was presented at the trustee table by trustees. And senior admin has done a really good job filling that gap when the trustees haven't been reporting on policies. But I firmly believe that it is a trustee area that they should be involved in. And I think a committee needs to be struck in order of trustees to do that. The number of trustees, I'm very open to an amendment if somebody feels it's too many trustees. That was in the motion, and that was 3. It certainly needs senior admin input because they're the ones that have the most knowledge of the things that we need to do. But I think we as trustees need to take more of a leadership role in what the policies of our board are.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for a mover or a seconder, then we'll go to the floor. Okay, moved by? Okay. The recommended motion, and I'm just going to read what's here, that the Upper Canada School Board establish standing policy committee consisting of 3 trustees and a board resource person as selected by the director. Moved by Trustee Cram, seconded by
Barry.
Trustee Barry?
Correct. Mr. Chair, just a point of procedure.
Pardon? Yes, go ahead.
I have no difficulty with the motion. The only thing is, it is there was a notice of motion put in place, and the notice of motion, from what I understood, was to amend the bylaws and to form a standing committee. It should be part of the bylaws. The motions that are before us have no mention of amending the bylaws and including this in the bylaws. We should indicate that this is not just a resolution of the board. This is going to be a standing committee, so it needs to be included within the bylaws.
What was the notice? You want to speak to that?
David, under the new bylaws that we passed, I think a few meetings ago, our committees were all part of, I believe it was Appendix A. And within our bylaws itself, the area for committees say that they are outlined with their makeup in Appendix A. And I believe that would then just put this motion into that part of our bylaw.
Trying to find the...
I just referenced the fact that accountability framework is spelled out in the bylaws, and certainly talks specifically to, unless the ones that are on the site are not the most current ones, but we specify the accountability framework. The other committees that we do have are legislative committees, typically. So if we're going to stipulate something, we should ensure that it is a portion.
Yeah, I agree, David. They were, all of our standing committees were put into the bylaws with their makeup, including accountability framework and other ones that we have. So it would just be an additional one put into that appendix.
can we just review the bylaws currently? Because if we look at the bylaws, you have the accountability framework that's listed specifically in the bylaw, not in the appendix.
Chair, may I speak to this, please?
You care to speak, John?
I do.
Yes, go ahead.
To address Trustee McDonald's concern, at the after the word director, could we add as an amendment such committee to be included in the bylaw?
Put a statement about committees that will all be put into Appendix B. Right, sorry, Appendix A, and all of them are defined in Appendix A. That's the old bylaw.
That's the old bylaw. So
The new one isn't up to date. The new one hasn't been published up to date.
Okay.
You have to go back to the actual board motion.
Okay, way back
that
to
was presented.
We're still splitting hairs here, gentlemen.
Split away.
Right there, they don't have the appendix, but we do have a special committee that you can follow. Oh my gosh. It's under special committees. It's under,
You have to go back, Lisa, to the motion that we made a couple of weeks ago.
7.3. It's under special committees.
Is 7.35.
7.00.
It can be placed as a special committee.
Sure, that's what falls under. This is intended as a standing committee.
By board resolution, I think.
Do you want to have a recess, Mr. Chairman, while we research this and come back in?
Yes, I'm going to suggest a short recess while we sort this out.
Thank you.
10 minutes, is that fine with everybody? Don't go too far. Okay. Okay, so Mike's live. John, David, Lisa. Okay.
Here.
We have a motion. And we also have reached a decision. And Trustee Cram shall speak first.
I can't make the motion, so I'm looking for somebody to make a motion. And this, we're going to hopefully refer it to the next board meeting because we've gone through the bylaws and one section needs to be looked at by omission or whatever word we need to look at it. But basically we want to, at this point, change it from a standing committee to a special committee. Then it would fit the bylaws. And then we have to amend the motion a little bit to get it back to a standing committee after we look at the bylaws. If that's the direction I think we've got. So I'd be looking for somebody to move a referral to the next board meeting, and then we'll look at the wording of this particular motion a little bit better.
But,
Mr. Chair,
we still have a motion on the floor.
The motion to refer will take precedence.
The motion to defer will take place in that. Comment on the
Mr. Chair.
phone.
Mr. Chair, may I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
My point of order was just more of a housekeeping issue. We have a notice of motion which indicates that we had an intent to amend the bylaws, which is the process for us to amend the bylaws. I was simply stating that the motion that is before us would pass a resolution and it doesn't have any indication that it's amending the bylaws. I think the amendment that we could see before us tonight would be just simply adding the word bylaws be amended to include policy committee as a standing committee.
So you're happy with that?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I just wanted to make sure from a housekeeping standpoint that it was not reflected as a special committee, but as a standing committee, if that's what our intent is, and that we need to make sure that it is indicated in our motion that we're passing tonight that we are in fact amending the bylaws, which we've laid out clearly by a notice of motion, and so then therefore it would be ingrained and included within our bylaws.
That's his intent, do it. That's his intent, do it. Nobody objects.
Okay, any further comment?
Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I agree.
So there's no referral on the table, so now you just have the motion.
Okay, so we have no referral on the table, so we're going to deal with the motion.
Okay. Well, I just don't want to look at that.
The motion moved by Trustee Cram, seconded by Trustee Barry, that the Upper Canada District School Board establish a standing policy committee consisting of 3 trustees and a board resource person as selected by the director. Does there need to be any change to that motion to satisfy everybody? Yes. Trustee McCray.
I would like to make a different amendment. I do support the where this is coming from, but my reading of the recommended action, number 3, on your screens before you, would limit ability to bring forward motions that didn't come specifically from this committee. My reading of it is to bring forward to the board the introduction of any new policy recommendation that is to be developed by motion of the board suggests that the other side of that is that that's the only place. So when you say any new policy, some individual member of the board might want to bring forward a policy that may or may not be supported by the board as a whole. But it should not, the wording should not preclude the ability for any of us to bring forward a motion. And my reading of that is, my amendment is to strike clause 3 from it, and then I'm good to go.
Motion to amend the motion, is that what we're dealing with? Okay. Do we deem it a friendly motion or no?
Yeah, to get it on the floor, yes, I would.
Yes, it's deemed a friendly motion, so I need a seconder to the motion Or do the mover and seconder
No, it
simply agree?
just automatically
Okay.
comes out.
Okay. The motion now strikes section 3. Any further comment?
Chair, will we be voting on the amendment?
No,
Or the
there is
whole-
no amendment. It was deemed a friendly amendment and both the mover and seconder have agreed to it. So we're striking item number 3 on the mandate.
So my question then is, I think it's important that trustees have the opportunity to do that, but if we are going to establish a committee, that if it's brought forward, it should be reviewed by the committee before it's passed by the board. Otherwise, what's the point in having a committee?
Okay, we have a comment from the other side. Now,
I would say that it's important for that committee to bring forth what is discussed in clause 1 and 2. What is the exclusivity of the word any? I have a problem with that.
I think my point was, for clarification, was that, trustees can bring things to the table, and with the intent of having a policy, but without having a policy committee review it, then we're basically taking the legs out of the policy committee. And if our intent is to have a policy committee report to the board on any new, revised, adjusted policy, then it should be all policies, not only certain ones.
Do you see it, David, as if that were the case, do you see it allowing, the way it's written, to allow a policy to be brought forward by any other individual who may or may not have brought it to the committee?
Yeah, I guess, and Mr. Chair, may I? I'm kind of assuming the floor here. I apologize.
Yes.
Okay.
Is it okay if I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, in some context, I mean, if we go back a number of years, we had a policy committee, and the policy committee is not necessarily the generation of ideas of policy, but it is the wordsmithing. It is the work committee that helps the board establish what the policy should look like, and keeps in mind the overarching role of the board. And it's not so much the idea generator.
Thank you. The motion as it now stands has struck. Yes.
Trustee McAllister.
Chair?
Oh, yes, Trustee McAllister, sorry. Go ahead.
I do not see that amendment as being friendly, because I think you take away the third whereas, you might as well scrap the committee. And to answer Trustee McCrae's question, I don't think it precludes any trustee from bringing forth a motion. But if such a motion were to be brought forth with regard to any particular issue, then it would be referred to the policy committee for wordsmithing and whatnot, and then brought back to the board for a vote. The committee does not decide on the merits of the policy.
Thank you. Seeing as there's objections, we will have to deem the amendment unfriendly, and we will have to go to a vote on it. So, we have an amendment to remove section number 3 from the original motion. Mover by Trustee McCrae. Anyone care to second that amendment to the main motion? Calling twice. Calling 3 times. I see no seconder to the amendment. The amendment dies. I will now ask you to...
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, oh no.
Yes. Any further comment on the original motion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
If we look at the original motion, and maybe this would either be a friendly amendment or an amendment on my part, but the wording would be that the Upper Canada District School Board amend its bylaws to include the establishment of a standing policy committee. and then the rest would remain.
You're making that an amendment?
If it needs to be an amendment, yes.
Okay.
I would second.
Did Trustee McAllister, did you second it?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Lisa, did you get that? Back.
It does the same thing.
So, to understand, there'll be no motions brought forward unless they go to this committee by members of.
But the members here, if you refer it to the policy committee.
They can go to the policy
Not only
committee.
can, must.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I think
Yes.
we're ready. I think you're ready.
Okay. Okay, have we got it?
Yes, I'll copy it out so you can actually read it. It's from here.
Okay. I will read the motion to amend, and we will vote on that first. That the Upper Canada District School Board amend its bylaws to include a standing policy committee consisting of 3 trustees and a board resource person as selected by the director. The mandate of the policy committee is review on an ongoing basis current board policies and bring forward to the board all relevant changes necessary to keep our policies current, and to bring forward to the board all new policies required as a result of changes to any acts and regulations introduced by the Government of Ontario, and to bring forward to the board the introduction of any new policy recommendation that is to be developed by motion of the board. We have a mover and a seconder to the amendment. I will ask you to cast your votes online. Still waiting for it to pop up here. Pardon? No. We're still drawing blanks here.
It's not on the screen.
Okay. Seeing as that we seem to have a small malfunction, I'm going to ask for a recorded vote by hands.
I have my hand up.
Okay.
I have my hand up.
I have my hand up.
Okay, starting with Trustee Jacobs. Danaher.
In favor.
Okay, let's go to McCray. And in favor? Okay.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favor, Mr. Chair, 1 opposed.
Okay, thank you. Motion has carried. The amended motion has carried. The amendment carries.
Now the motion, which is the same as the amendment.
Okay, so now we're going to back up again. This seems to be overkill because the amendment motion is the same as the original motion now. Right?
Yes, sir.
But do we have to?
Might as well.
What?
Might as well, sir.
Okay,
Yeah.
seeing as we had so much fun doing it the first time, we're going to do it again. Okay. That the motion as amended, and we will vote again, that the Upper Canada District School Board amend its bylaws to include a standing policy committee consisting of 3 trustees and a board resource person as selected by the director. I'm going to cut it off there because the mandate remains the same.
Correct.
I ask you to cast your ballots online if available. Not working? Okay, again.
In favor.
Recorded vote by show of hands, starting with Trustee Jacobs, Danaher, Barry, Schooler, McCray, no, and myself, yes.
And people online?
And online?
McAllister, yes.
How many do we get?
McDonald, yes.
Okay, trustee Swan?
Swan, yes.
And trustee McAllister?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Motion passed, Mr. Chair.
Motion has passed. Okay. Item 14.01. Report to the board in private session. At its committee of the whole meeting in private session February 6, 2019, one litigation matter was discussed and no recommendations were brought forward to the board. You also have some reports attached to the end of your agenda, and we will now move into private session. And we need a mover and a seconder to do such.
I'll move it, second it, whatever.
Okay, moved by trustee Barry, seconded by trustee Swan, that the Upper Canada District School Board move into committee of the whole February 27, 2019 at 9:12 p.m. Please cast your vote, show of hands. Motion carried.
Oh, it's coming up.
Oh, it's coming up, okay.
That was the last item.
Okay.
Private session.
And it looks like motion's carried anyway. We need motion number 2 to move into private session. Moved by trustee Danaher, second by trustee McCray, that the committee of the whole move into private session February 27th, 2019. Cast your ballots. And motion carried. Thank you.